page 16, that where it says Earthkeeper, where it says email, phone, attachment, domain, project name, and success sentence, make sure that's filled out. And then Kathleen's going to go around and collect that, scan it, and then we'll get it back to you. So
we need it now.
We need it now, though, to get this. We want to get a list of other projects to share with everybody. Page 16. Page 16.
Yes?
Can I make a suggestion that you scan it in a PDF? You scan it in a way that it goes into text instead of an image?
We're going to put it in the database. It's not going to be scanned back to you, and we're scanning it for our use thinking. And you will get it back, but it will be on the database.
So that it'll be easy for us to copy and paste?
It won't give 35 pages to get the information. It'll give one page to get the information.
Please take a moment, just fill that italic part out, please. And then Kathleen will run around and collect it, scan it, and return it to you.
All we need is page.
Dan?
Yes.
Can you update our schedule, like, on your...
I'm sorry?
I know we switched things around on our schedule.
Yeah.
Can you just give us a lay of the land of what we're doing this afternoon?
Just evaluation and education, and the spiritual dimensions this evening.
Yeah. I looked at the weather and out.
Oh, Huey.
This one right there.
Okay, I'm going to get started on this. I guess we'll let people finish up here. Yeah.
I was going to go around.
Oh,
Thanks.
no problem.
Just to make sure I haven't turned the right way.
Okay, evaluation. Evaluation might sound formal, scary, people looking over you, evaluating you. Really it isn't. Evaluation is very simple. You've done evaluation already when you put together your success sentence. You essentially said, this is how we're going to evaluate our project. And you did a very good job with that. And so you basically say, this is what we dream our outcome of our project is. And so then you evaluate according to that. And there's different ways to, first of all, you ask the question, who's going to evaluate? Is it going to be the people involved in your project? Hopefully so. The planners, the participants, perhaps those who might benefit from the project, involve them in evaluating the project. And this is all on page 14 of your guide if you want to follow along. And there's various ways you can do this, and I'm going to keep this fairly compact. One is in terms of being measurable, okay? This is an example from South End United Methodist Church. They did a community garden in Nashville, and eventually the immigrant community became very involved in gardening in the community garden. It built community. They got fresh produce, and the immigrant community became closer to the congregation. And so you can measure this. You can say by November 2018, 100 baskets of fresh organic produce will be harvested and distributed to 20 recent immigrant families. You could say by November 2018, 20 recent immigrant families will plant and harvest organic vegetables in our community garden. It's a very simple thing to measure. And I noticed some of your success sentences had measurable outcomes in it. But also, some things are much harder to measure, and it's important to recognize that. And so you look at these as qualitative outcomes. Just stating our congregation became much closer to our local immigrant community. And then you might gather a story or stories that exemplify this. And so you're just saying that's one of our goals, that we become closer to our immigrant community. And you might have a story or an anecdote or several stories that indicate that. And then there's longer term impacts, okay? Things outside of your project, things that you're going to impact outside of your project. For instance, our project helped catalyze a sustainable food movement in our local community or in our annual conference, and inspired people to do that. And it could be a large impact, or it can be just a smaller impact, just outside of the community, outside of the project. And sometimes you don't know that. Sometimes, things just resonate out there, and you have impacts 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and that's fine, and you probably can't evaluate that, but that's how things ripple out, and that's great. But some of that you can kind of sense and say, that's what we'd like to see. We've done our success sentence. Another piece of evaluation is just simply having benchmarks. We did some of these when we did our project plans. For instance, by June 2017, we'll have a project plan in place. By March 2018, we will have begun planting in our community garden. These are just benchmarks. They help you know that you're making progress. You're setting some simple goals that allow you to get some sense that you're having success along the way. And finally, there's process evaluation. And this is extremely important and also very simple to do. You don't start out with saying what went wrong. Well, Susie forgot to bring the apples. And then everybody complains, well, Susie forgot to bring that. Why didn't Susie bring that? Yeah, it's just, and, these things just kind of roll on, and, you're talking for 5 years of why Susie or Sam didn't bring the apples to the potluck that you desperately needed. And so you don't start there. You really start with, what went well, and then you ask, perhaps, what can we improve? But probably more importantly, what have we learned by doing this? What have we learned? What can we celebrate? What have we heard? And that's what we often forget. What are we hearing from the community that we're working with? What have we heard? where is the energy? Projects have energy. And if you can tap that energy, identify and tap that energy, they can help energize the project, as simple as that. And so ask, where's the energy? Sometimes you don't want to do this all the time, but sometimes you can ask, where's the stressors in our project and how can we alleviate them? You can ask, who else might we involve? What might we add to the project? Prune from the project? And do we need to amend or shift our design? Those are all questions you can ask along the way. And you don't want to ask them at every meeting, but you can kind of integrate them in and ask them along the way. But whenever you do something major, you want to ask at least several of those important questions. So any questions about evaluation? Any questions or comments?
These seem like questions that you then capture the answers to, and that's great because it's why you ask them. But then it makes you kind of go nuts because then you have to keep minutes and then you have to keep notes and then it doesn't seem and then it becomes the boondoggle of this thing again.
Yeah, that's why you often don't feel that you have to take them all down. You just feel that you can capture them if you wish, or sometimes they just become part of the conversation and you move along. You just ask those questions after, you just have a debriefing of a major event and you ask some of those questions and you move along. But you try to take the learnings from that to improve your project. You're exactly right though. Evaluation can just take over a project if you're just constantly measuring things, constantly asking those questions. So it's a good point. And so often it can just kind of be integrated into your oral discussion of your project. So. Yes, Paul.
Just counterpoint. Really helpful to get it down on paper.
Okay.
Having a written history. What did we talk about 11 months ago? As we, what was that great idea somebody had? Nobody can remember. Maybe it wasn't so great if they can't remember, but often it is great and you've just forgotten it. So I think there is real value in it. There's, that's different personality types, different skill sets. There's some person who could just knock that out and take down the notes, type it up, knock it out in half an hour at most. So I think there is value in getting that stuff down.
Okay. Thanks, Paul. And Paul and I are different that way.
Yeah.
Paul asked me at one meeting, well, how come you're not taking notes? And I said, I really take notes, but Paul takes good notes, and that's a gift that Paul has. Yes?
The other positive for notes, and not comprehend, I'm not talking bogged down in them, but to prevent history repeating itself in a negative way, what didn't work, that key problem, if we don't have it documented, maybe it's going to happen again. Or if something happens to the leadership that they're not there, for somebody to be able to go back and look at those notes and go, this is how they did it, and this is a record of what we keep on doing.
Yes.
The other thing is, we're kind of assuming that we're just kind of keeping these for ourselves. If you ever need money to run these programs, you're going to have to do that.
Yeah, particularly with big projects, with financial backing, some real records of these types of things are become important. So again, it's the size of your project, the culture of your community, all those types of things get part of the mix, and evaluating how much you need, written.
They're very important to have, and accountability. Who remembers 6 months ago who's, what they said they're going to do, who's in charge of this?
Good points. Any other points of discussion? Well, we're going to just take, again, as another individual exercise, to take 20 minutes, try to think of one measurable outcome for your project. Again, these are going to change when you get out in the field, but this, we're just practicing this. Think of a qualitative outcome from your project. Think of a longer-term impact that your project might have outside of your project, and one benchmark. And so just get a little practice writing evaluation indicators. We'll come back at 20 after 3. If you're not completely done, don't worry about it. But just come back at 20 after 3 with whatever you have.
So it's 3, measurable outcome, qualitative outcome, and benchmark?
And longer-term impact, it's 4 actually. Measurable outcome, qualitative outcome, longer-term impact, and a benchmark. Mhm.
One more time, I want to write this.
Okay. Measurable outcome, it's on page 14, the things in italics. Qualitative outcome, longer-term impact, and benchmark.
14 in the
And I will say, Dan, the way, when you describe it, you have a really kind of low-key, a really relaxed way of describing it that sounds much better than those than the name that's on this page. I think that name can seem overwhelming.
Right.
But when you describe it, you think, well, that's not a big deal to do that. So I think that's really helpful.
So just take 20 minutes and practice it a little bit, and have you have a sense of evaluation.
And your sheets are on the back table by Pat and Susan.
And they're ready.
And they're ready. They're ready to go.
What's that? Okay. Let's settle, please.
Pray how to follow.
At least you'll have another driver or two.
Well, let's would somebody like to share one example of a measurable outcome? Yes.
Mine is really easy because it's solar panels.
Okay.
So what we track is kilowatts sold and CO2 avoided.
Okay.
Very concrete.
Mm-hmm. Great. One more measurable outcome. Yes.
Number of youth regularly attending in the weekly gatherings.
Great. Okay. Thank you. A qualitative outcome. Yes, Paul?
Yeah, kind of following up on the example that you gave, but I just like the idea of having the subsidy is to have a certain number of churches that have substantial creation care ministries going. And the qualitative would be to have some really inspiring stories to share that would then encourage additional congregations to start having creation care ministries.
Okay. Thank you. One more qualitative outcome?
More congregants will be able to voice their story about calling to care for about their calling to care for God's creation.
Great, that's a good one. Mm-hmm. Thank you. This is a harder one to do, but does anybody have a longer term impact that they might see out of their project?
So
Yes. Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. You got it.
A way to follow how the youth have impacted their families
Mm-hmm.
to care for creation.
Okay. So you want the youth to impact their families to
We're infiltrating.
infiltrate their families to care for creation. Okay, there's a longer term impact. Yeah.
Discern whether or not the United Methodist Church needs an external organization to resource creation care, or if the needs can be met internally, if it has to be external, what internal resources could be used to support that.
Great. Mm-hmm. And finally, a benchmark. There's a benchmark. Yeah.
Yeah, remember I'm looking at incorporation for the Valuation steward. So Earthkeepers is adopted as a games course like February 2000.
Okay, great.
Combined VES with all 3 parishes August 26th and 25th and 26th, 2017.
Look, I think you're really getting the gist of this whole evaluation piece, so great. One more, Paul.
Well, just a lesson that I learned was that I completely did my original timeline when I did the benchmarks.
Okay.
I saw that if I have to reach these benchmarks, there's no way I'm going to then be able to complete the project by the time I had originally thought.
Yeah, that's an important insight. Yeah. Any other insights that people got from this process? Anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, I realize that while I can set my timeline goal, I really don't know how, in some cases, like, what are the timelines of the organization you have to deliver? You may
Right.
find that that's totally out of sync.
Right. And so again, yeah, you're exactly right. So sometimes you'll still have the same benchmark, but you might have to adjust the time. Sometimes you might have to adjust the benchmark, and that all comes into play. Again, when you're working out in communities, you kind of set your goals, but you can't force your goals. And so and sometimes the goals change in different ways. They're beautiful, and so it's again it kind of gives you a sense of how you're moving forward. But again, part of what we do in evaluation is we adapt our projects. And Dottie often reminds us that she started out with trying to keep people from, how did you put it? Right? Yeah, and it changed completely. And so just putting up signs not to eat the fish, and it ended up being fish farming and all sorts of other things. And so again, these your projects evolve in all sorts of wonderful ways. And good evaluation, like this good process evaluation, will help that along. You'll start. You're learning different things, you're hearing different things, you're finding out there's energy in these different ways. Certain things just cause maybe too much stress in the project, and they're not that important, and so you let them go. So there's any numbers of things. A good evaluation can just kind of help your project move along. Well, I realize this is the tough part of the afternoon, at least for me. The late afternoon, it's usually when I take my nap. So you're all soldiering through and everything, and I appreciate that. We're going to finish our final session here on education. I don't take a nap every day.
It's okay.
But when I do, it's in the late afternoon.
Subvert capitalism.
Subvert capitalism, yeah. Bring the siesta back. So turn to page 15, and we'll do one more exercise on education.
They took our 15 is on our 16.
Oh, that's right. It's probably,
Pages.
you need to get your pages back. Yeah.
And they should be graded by now. Those D-minuses.
D-minuses.
I didn't get an A. Oh, no. You got an A plus.
No, I see what you're saying.
Mine had a smiley face.
Oh, yeah. Oh, boy. Gold star.
So I've identified 4 guiding questions for education in your project. And again, education, some of it is very formal and some of it is just learning. You're learning along the way. And it's very informal. And in fact, most of the learning is going to be informal. And so questions, how will people learn along the way in your project? How will people learn new skills in your project? How will people learn new habits in your project? And then how will people connect the project to the larger picture? And that's often one we have a tendency to leave out, but how do we connect our project to the larger picture? And as folks probably know, there's a wide variety of modes of education, including presentations. Presentations are great for getting out lots of information. They're also the point where most people slept when I'm presenting, or more people sleep when I'm presenting. So be careful with presentations as your only mode. Materials that you can hand out and websites, readings, blogs, discussions, of course, a great way. Exercises, we've done a number of exercises as we've been here.
Art of hosting.
Art of hosting. And then engagement and reflection. That means you're going out and engaging in the project. You're doing whatever it is you're doing in the project. And they tell you with service learning projects, with, you know, they send youth out to do things. They really only learn if they come back and reflect. I mean, or they don't learn as much unless they come back and reflected on what they've done. You know, what have we learned while we've done this? And so it's important to kind of incorporate that into your project to some extent. And then finally, they tell you that you retain the most information when you have to teach others. And so, you know, teaching others, so if you can find ways that people can teach others in your project, it may not always be possible, but it's a great way for people to, and I've heard several people in their projects, you know, examples of we'll have youth teaching folks how to garden or plant trees or whatever. They'll become the experts in this. They'll teach others, and they've learned that. They've learned much more if they just went out and did it. And so there's a lot to be said for teaching others. And so the question is, what educational experiences might you include in your project? And so we're going to do one more short exercise. And we're going to count off, to mix us all up, we're going to count off by 5.
1, 2,
3,
4,
5.
1, 2, 3.
4.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1,
2,
3, 4,
5.
1, 2, 3, 4.
5.
1, 2, 3,
4.
Okay.
And Dale.
And Dale is 5. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take, you're going to sit in the group, and you'll choose one of the projects that are there. It could be any of the projects. It really doesn't, you know, whatever seems the one most ready to work with. And design a learning experience around this project. But don't just have it be a presentation. I mean, it can include a presentation, but include engagement in it, and then include one or more of the other learning modes that I just presented to foster deeper reflection on what people have learned, and probably connecting it to the larger picture. And so what people have learned in a way to connect it to the larger picture. For instance, on climate or you know, the things that we're facing with biodiversity and things like that. And so you're essentially just working with one of the projects, design a learning experience based on engagement, and you can include one or more of the learning modes. You can have a presentation before the engagement, whatever you want to do that you know, brings new learning for the people that are engaged in the project. Let's settle in if everybody could. This will be our final list. Is group 1 here?
Yep.
Group 1, group 2 here? 3, 4,
Yes.
5. Okay, let's hear from group 5's first. What is your project, and what were you thinking in terms of education? Just a really short piece. Yep.
Okay, I think everybody knows what my project is. Some ideas that people came up with.
Tell me again your project, I'm sorry.
Sorry, okay. To bring people into discussion that is faith-based and respective of differing viewpoints about caring for God's creation. Bringing everybody into the discussion and just making that circle wider and wider as time goes on. So one idea was telling stories. There were several things about telling stories, a recommendation about having people actually go to a storytelling class, but then, most importantly, having personal climate impact stories. Having members who've been in a book study that we've been doing to do some kind of reflection, either as a story or as a picture. One kind of out there idea was to have virtual reality experiences where, you know, you might go to an environment that you're normally not in. Maybe you have a drone fly through the tar sands or off the side of a calving glacier. We talked, and I love this one, get a bunch of grandparents around and have them envision their grandchildren's futures.
Wow.
And being in nature, and I gotta say, I really enjoyed being out there doing this exercise in nature. It was very inspiring. But having a field trip where we're out in nature, maybe a healthy environment and maybe a broken environment, and then telling stories out there and maybe involving park rangers or other people who can share extra information.
All right, thank you. Great idea. Let's hear from group 4.
Okay, so my project is called, is it God's Backyard Explorers? And it's a project that will connect children and youth to God's creation and the Creator. People will learn, it will be a field trip or an event-based program, and people will learn before, during, and after. For example, during a Sunday school class, kids would get general information about sort of the scriptural piece, and then also some information about where their field trip is going and what they're going to do. The actual event would be a day-long trip, 6 hours to a local park, pond, whatever. I would probably start with fishing because, you know, there's just so many great scriptures about fishing and metaphors and all that. And plus it's a fun skill that kids can learn, and adults. This can be a really good intergenerational program. And so that would be a new skill. They would actually be taught how to fish. The new habit, not just fishing though, also kind of offer a menu of courses, hiking, fishing, stream stroll, service projects, but built into every trip there would be a time of just romp and stomp, unstructured play, because kids don't ever get to do that anymore. And then new habit would be actually the habit of being outdoors, overcoming the fear of being outdoors, the habit of being aware of, in order for these kids to care anything about any of this stuff that we're talking about, they have to have a relationship, and the younger generation does not have a relationship with the outdoors. And how will people connect the project to the larger picture? That would be included at every step of the way and then ongoing. This would not just be a one-time thing. Hopefully it would be a quarterly thing or a seasonal thing, especially seasonal because it'd be cool to take a hike on the same trail in spring, summer, fall, winter. So that's, yeah.
All right, thank you. Good job, group 4. Group 3.
Hi, my name is Emily Ripley. We're doing a Lenten carbon fast at Candler, and so we talked about a number of different ways to do that. We're going to kind of balancing the like individual aspects. Everybody's doing different things, but also it being a collective project for the whole school. And so we talked about doing like a spiritual, a practical, and a systemic actions. And so spiritual might be like everybody collectively is doing a devotional on eco-theology and Lent during the whole season. Practical, everybody has different things that like the practical steps that they actually take to reduce their carbon footsteps. And so like before this, we would be compiling different practices you could do and like what that would translate to in terms of reducing your carbon. And then systemic, another piece of it would be an advocacy. So like in addition to me biking to school, I would also say I'm going to talk to one person each day about why I'm biking to school and relating that to climate injustices. And so connecting carbon and carbon emissions with climate injustice and basically having all three of those things. And then the other piece of that was the like spiritual, theological. And so we're going to talk about like why this does it. And that piece needs developed a little bit more. We talked about footsteps in the wilderness and a carbon footprint. There might be something there. Calling awareness to how we consume carbon in our daily lives, and by sort of not partaking in that carbon consumption, we're calling awareness to it and how we do that all the rest of our lives, and some sort of like Sabbath for the earth. So that piece is still in works. And then we're going to conclude with like a big Easter celebration where we look at our collective experience, learnings, growings, and the overall impact that we've had, which also encourage people to develop practices that they continue after Lent. And then we're going to compile everything we do together, get it all written down, all in a process, share it with everybody else so that you all can do it in 2018, and then that we're thinking big. In 2019, we're going to do United Methodist-wide carbon limiting.
Yeah. Wow.
That's the larger impact, yeah. So, good job, group 3. Group 2.
Are they still outside?
Yeah, we'll try to. I'm doing the Polarize Dunwoody program, which is my community. And we already have kind of plans to reach out to the adults who are the decision makers. But I wanted to also work with the children. We spend a lot of time in our schools telling the kids to take care of the environment, but we don't follow it up with action. Like, for example, in our public schools, we don't even have recycling. So they put all their paper in the trash. So I wanted to work at the middle school. We only have one middle school in our community, so it's a little easier than going to 5 elementary schools. And the science teacher is very supportive of these kind of activities. And somebody gave me the idea to have solar panels to set up a sample array, and then the children and the students can go out on a regular basis and get the measurements off, how much is being generated. They can compare the weather and see what happens different days, like on different days. And then I also thought I would have a watts up meter available to them so they could, put different appliances in and see how much power each item draws. And then there's also a recommendation for stickers, fun stuff, and food.
Always.
Always. Thanks. Good job, group 2. And finally, group 1.
Back to the after-school idea. Got a lot of good ideas from the group, though, about making it definitely engaging, not just thinking about it. During the winter, there's not a whole lot you can do outside. So if we start as planned in the February timeframe, there'll be a weekly gathering of 9th through 12th graders where they will get acquainted, become introduced to climate change. We're losing aspirin trees. We're losing our springs and our streams. There's things going on in the county that we can invite their parents to come in and share stories of how it used to be and compare even now in just such a short amount of time the changes that are happening. And then open that up if you think maybe the climate is changing and open those dialogues. In the spring, do a tree planting and again partnering with the Green Riders and having them communicate with folks in a totally another continent to open their eyes to climate change worldwide and the impact that's happening. So trying to get not only the youth, but their families involved, and then the big connection. Once a month, every 6 weeks, depending on how the school likes it, those youth can then go to the children's classes and share what they've learned. So by teaching, they're learning more. But by taking in some exercises and fun stuff to the children, then they would be sharing the new information.
Martha, the Tennessee Department of Forestry is very generous with seedlings.
All right, good job, group 1. Great job. Any final reflections on all of this?
I'm kind of looking for a new name for mine, so if you have any great, I think there's so much more creative people here, so if you wake up in the middle of the night and have a great idea, let me know. Well, don't let me know in the middle of the night. Probably breakfast would be better.
Maybe a text in the middle of the night.
Knock on her door.
Any other final reflections? Yes?
Just something that I've heard a couple of times now, and that is, can the results of these things be recorded and transplanted? As, kind of like cookbooks.
Replicable.
When somebody has great success with a project, can we have a clearinghouse for cookbooks?
That's a great idea.
That's kind of what I want to do with my project. So, like, I'm going to get with already existing resources, but as you write up your resources, send them to me, and I'll include them in that, so it will be shared with others. Plus, we have a Facebook group.
And Pat, are you taking notes on this?
No, I'm not paying attention to Denise was talking.
I'll talk to you after.
It's on fire.
You two may need to be separated.
It was just the idea that we should be compiling these and so that we can in a way that they're replicated. And Jonathan said,
My project is about developing a resource kind of library. So as people write up resources, they'll send them to me and people will have them.
So,
And we think that's going to happen. So yeah, let's do have that conversation. Anybody ever heard of Cornerstone in here? It's an online.
Learning management system.
It's a learning management system. And you know more about it than I do probably, but it'll do what he's talking about probably, right? So I think
that's what I was sort of curiously hooked when he said that, but he's sitting right next to the person who will be, why didn't you think it was Karen? Yes,
he already told me.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. So yes, this is a learning management system, and that's why we've been scanning things. So and the database of things, you'll be sent a link so that you can register to access information on Cornerstone. But Global Ministries uses it for many things: HR, child safety, online learning for training, but you will have access to the Earthkeepers section. So it may be, I mean, I don't know where to go with that, but I think you and Scott can have those conversations. I think it could be quite rich.
And do you know if it enables them to communicate back and forth and know how to be in touch with each other?
I know you can communicate with the administrator.
Okay.
And I think you can, no, I
Have
think you
online
can have,
chats?
yeah, you can have chats and group meetings and things like that. I mean, Global Ministries has had it, as Kathleen said, primarily to use for HR, for onboarding and for training. But there is this management process, part of it, this training process, that we at the Center for Mission Innovation have taken and said, we want to explore what that can do and how we can use it. So we're just beginning with that, but we think that this would be a place that we would like to try with you all to say, let's connect with, that's why, as Kathleen said, we're scanning everything because we'll go back to the person who knows how to use it and say how much of this can go on there and how can it be a resource for you all. So it would be great if it
So you stay hooked up with Scott.
Scott, yeah.
Is there the possibility sometime while we're here to at least have somebody to show us at least kind of how?
Not at this point, no. They're not here, the person who can do that. But we will send you a link in terms of registering is just, you know, like you're signing up for a rock concert or something.
So Denise, could you say that center again? What's the center?
The Center for Mission Innovation. That is the newest unit of Global Ministries that we all are a part of.
Is that also going to have where we can access names and emails and contacts? Because there's people that I would like to be in touch with, but I may not want to go to a chat room over.
Right.
Yeah, if Cornerstone does not let us do that, then we'll email that around. I assume, is everybody okay if we send your email address to everybody else? I don't want to do that if you're not, but everybody's.
But we do have the Facebook group too.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you don't want your name shared, let
just
Pat
let me know.
know.
I still haven't gone back.
one or two more
And
comments?
so it occurs to me that like as we develop our projects or programs or advocacy campaigns or whatever, as we create them, if we think in terms of creating it almost like you said as a cookbook, I mean, think in terms of your audience and what you're doing, but how can I present this or record this in a way that could be replicable somewhere else? And that way you develop the tool, not only for your use, but then you almost franchise it or spin it out all over the place.
That's a good idea, yeah.
Do you think that would be the role of a member of your core team, the cookbook writer? Or do you think that's
You're
asking too
saying that
much?
to me?
Do you think that it would be something that the whole core team of the project should be doing together, or do you think that you would assign that to somebody and say you're the cookbook writer?
Depends on the project and who you
Yeah,
got.
I mean, one of the things that we are going to be asked is, as Global Ministries, and we want to put out there, is how are they doing in their projects?
Right.
What are the successes that are being had? is this something that we would want to do again and again and again and again? And one of the ways that that will be yes is how are they moving forward with that? And it may even be you do something and you fail, but you say, what did we learn from that? So absolutely, we need to figure out a way, and that's what we're trying to do. How do we stay connected with you all so that we can track what you're doing? Not to check up on you, but that will help each of you, and it will help us to share this with the whole United Methodist Church.
I think basically a lot of people, as they do things, you think they can be posting and talking about it. That'll help a lot, I think.
Couple more comments?
And that's why Earthkeepers needs to be an ongoing ministry of the United Methodist Church.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And
To
it will
facilitate
go on-
this conversation.
And it will go on next summer. The second one is already
Right.
on the calendar. I don't know if I've mentioned that. So it'll be in August. I don't remember the dates. It'll be in August in Arkansas at Mount Sequoia, which is the South Central Jurisdiction Retreat Center.
So,
Next summer.
absolutely.
So we will do the second one definitely. Yeah.
Circling back on the resource library, it would be dreamy if there was an actual library component where there are resources that cost money if you buy them, but that you could check out. That would, I mean, I know that there's a cost to that sort of thing, but like I mean, our annual conference has a media resource center, and churches can check out something online or get it in the mail. I mean, it's something online stuff would be better, but like, it would be phenomenal to have churches be able to just check out a curriculum to use their one time they're going to use it, and then give it back, and somebody else is using it.
I mean, that's the kind of the goal for my project in a sense. I mean, we can talk more about it. It's kind of open-ended right now.
Yeah. I think it would be not dreamy to institutionalize this library that nobody uses. To buy this thing and then to have it be there and be yucky.
Yeah.
Not that it would have to be yucky, but like it could be something.
Dreamy and yucky.
I
I love it.
So I think I'm personally more interested in seeing us do this than saying, hey church, do this, don't let us down. Oh God, you let us down again. Why do you always let us down? So, I don't know, I just think that having Jonathan, guy with the hat? I
Yes,
can't remember.
I'm Jonathan.
Okay.
I'll look at you really confused. Who are you talking to? Steve.
So maybe doing a both and thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe do both, yeah.
Okay, any last comments? I want to give people a little bit of time.
Yeah. Jonathan might, a year from now, decide to become a fisherman or something. You know, there is something about institutionalizing things to a certain extent. Yeah, to have something that's ongoing that is with the church. We don't know this green hat guy.
Yeah, you don't.
Yeah.
So let's think about all these things. I want to give people a little bit of time outdoors, and that we'll be back here at you have dinner, of course, and we're back here at 6:30.
But I want to see a couple of people first.
D
Ellen,
minus.
what?
D minus.
Ellen Comstock, Bill Middlecamp, Cheryl Nyman, Martha Lawford, Tina Wilkinson, Marcella Chicotelli, Martha Pierce, Sarah Lawton,
Scary.
Bob Downs, Renee Wood, and Tennille. She's not here. So come see me just a minute. You guys are volunteering for worship.
Oh, that's it.